Hey, travel fam, it's Darian, and welcome back to I Need Travel Therapy. Today we have a great episode. We're going to be talking to Emma, who is an SLP with lots of experience, about her experience doing travel therapy, her side hustle, which is thrifting, which is very interesting, and working in schools. A little bit about Emma. She's been an SLP in a school setting for 10 years, working as a traveler for the past 3. She enjoys the freedom of living on the East Coast, West Coast, or somewhere in between while full-time in a travel trailer with her husband, cat, and several bins of thrifted clothing for her reselling side business. Let's get started with this episode. Hi, Emma. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I am great. We're so excited to have you today. I wanted to start off, I know we're going to be talking about a couple of different topics today, which are going to be great. But just to start off, can you tell us a little bit about your experience thus far? I know you have about 10 years of SLP experience. So can you tell us a little bit about what areas you've been working in and your career thus far?
So this is going into my 10th year, mainly pediatrics, working in schools. Within the school systems, I feel like I've done a little bit of everything. I inadvertently spent my first few years working up a very interesting resume, just kind of working from preschool to age 21, kids with articulation errors or kids who are non-speaking and working towards use of AAC, just kind of anything and everything. And just a very minimal amount of like home-based and PRN and skilled nursing. But yeah, pretty much stuck to the schools. I can't get away from it.
It is interesting to hear you say how much like variety there is within the schools, though. You know, you can work with a lot of different caseloads. Is there a specific type of caseload or diagnoses that you like to work with the best within the schools?
I wouldn't say so. I guess a favorite area is probably AAC, just because you're kind of working from the ground up and trying to find just a way for a student to just starting out to meet their wants and needs and just be heard and understood. But kind of when I go into a contract or an interview, I just say I'm open to anything because I think the more, I'm not like a specialist in any area, but the more I know about a lot of different things, the more comfortable I feel going into any setting, which I think is kind of needed as a traveler because if you want to go where you want to go or be in the placement you want to be in, you kind of have to keep your options open and be open to new things.
For sure. So have you been traveling that whole 10 years or did you start out as a permanent employee and then transition?
So we moved around, my husband and I, he's a physical therapist. We moved around Ohio for, I don't even know, 6-7 years and just never really found the place that felt like we wanted to settle down within Ohio. And that's when I started realizing that we could both travel and do it together. And I started pushing him into looking at RVs. And so 3 years later, here we are. And I'm back in Ohio, wouldn't you know?
Yeah, of course, right? Yeah. Well, you always end up going back home, right? So that first 6 or 7 years, you were not officially traveling. You were traveling, but taking permanent jobs and just trying new places out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Working in different school districts. I worked at a Board of Developmental Disabilities school. I worked in a charter school, a couple different public schools, a little bit of home health.
And I can only imagine all those schools are probably different, right? Yeah. Different districts, even if you're working with the same type of population, like they probably all run quite a bit different. Yeah. So getting that experience, that's great. And then at what point, I know you said that your husband's a physical therapist, so you guys could travel together, which is so great. Just because both SLPs and physical therapists are so in demand, which is, just great for you guys if you're traveling together. But at what point did you guys decide, or did you all of a sudden hear about travel therapy, or was there like that moment you can look back and you're like, oh, I, had a friend tell me about it and I wanted to make sure to move forward with this?
I honestly can't remember how it came about, like how we knew about the field. other than probably recruiters just contacting us just in general over the years. But we did we were living in Columbus, Ohio, and we quit our jobs and we took a truck and drove all the way out to California and back and hit like 12 national parks and just kind of spent like a month camping and living out of the truck and like a big road trip. And I remember when we pulled back into Ohio, it was kind of like this feeling of what now? Like we've seen, we hadn't really traveled a lot in general. So we saw all these things that we had never imagined or we had only seen in like, pictures and movies and on TV. And so when we got home, we were excited to be back, but we felt like just kind of this like empty hole inside of us. We're like, well, what do we do now? Because we don't have those things in the Midwest.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have a similar experience growing up in Minnesota. Ohio and Minnesota, they're both landlocked states, and like getting so excited to go out and take these trips and see the ocean or these road trips. And I think you realize that our country is like so big, and that probably kind of sparked a fire in you. And you're like, now I need to see more. I just have to do it. Can you tell us a little bit about the different places that you've traveled as a therapist and, if there's any of those places that have been your favorite?
So we are kicking off our 4th year as travelers, which has changed over the years. But we first went and did a pretty short assignment in Tennessee. I guess it was Eastern Tennessee near the Smokies. And then it got kind of cold. We were in an RV that really wasn't made to live in, nevertheless, in a winter. So as soon as that was over, I asked my recruiter to look for someplace warm, and then we went to Hilton Head, which was fantastic. So we kind of lived like we were on vacation there, like worked really hard through the week, but then you really have that like island mentality on the weekends. From there, we spent a school year in Washington State, about an hour south of Seattle and about a half hour east of Tacoma. That was lovely and kind of hard to come back from that one. I would say that was a favorite. And then this past school year, we were in upstate South Carolina, so more on the western side, kind of between Greenville, South Carolina, and Asheville, North Carolina. So we were kind of near mountains and like, I guess a little similar to the Pacific Northwest, but not.
So it's just on the other side of the country. I feel like being able to live on both like the East Coast and the West Coast like that, especially back to back, would be such a cool experience. I mean, I haven't really lived on either the East or the West Coast, but I feel like they're probably different, even though they're both, coastal communities and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So which has been your favorite so far? So you've gone to several different places. What has been your favorite?
Definitely Washington State. I guess for us, it was one of those things that we know we'll probably never live in a place like that long term. So just getting that chance to be there for a year, work, explore. We actually had friends in the area, which as a traveler, especially if you're kind of an introvert, it can be hard to make friends. So we actually had friends in the Seattle area that we got to spend time with. But just the like proximity to national parks, you have North Cascades, Mount Rainier, Olympic. I feel like there might be more. Those are the main ones, I think. But on a clear day, which is not that often during most months in the Pacific Northwest, we could see the top of Mount Rainier outside of our window in our RV. So that was like to drive to work. And if it was a clear day and just to see this huge mountain on your way to work, I'm like, I know this is not going to be where I live full time. So every day I'm going to stop and take a picture of it.
I feel the same way about mountains. I I lived in Colorado for 6 years, and when I would be driving to work, it'd be the same thing. You see the mountains, and I feel like you can't have a bad day when you're looking at mountains, you know? Same thing with the ocean. I love that you said that, because I feel the very same way. So in Washington, would you say like somebody that would be considering going to Washington or something like that, you know, being a more outdoorsy person might be the way to go for that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say much about Eastern Washington. We actually have friends in Eastern Washington as well.
Okay.
It's a little bit more like what I'm used to, I guess. Like it has 4 seasons. But as far as Western Washington, once you pass through the mountains, there's so much. And it's from someone who's from, you know, the eastern side of the country in the Midwest. It's vastly different. Like when I go to a beach vacation, which it was like Myrtle Beach every year for most of my growing up, that ocean, you know, Oregon and Washington, it's so different. It's like so night and day. Yeah. So just really unique experiences, and the mountains are huge, and the wildlife. I think there were the little town that we were in, you know, while we're close to everything, we were still in a rural area, which is what we prefer. It was really well known for having like elk that graze all around. And to me, cool. That like a lot of people, I think, travel because they want to go to the different cities and things, but you can do it and still embrace and be comfortable in like a more rural area nearby things that you want to do.
For sure. And it's probably nice for your RV too, to not be in these big cities. A better experience.
Yeah, especially if you upgrade to something bigger. My friend lived in Ballard, which is pretty much right in the city. And she's like, you can just pull your RV up here in front of the house. I'm like, I don't think you understand. Like, I don't know that we could safely do that. The streets are narrow. Yeah. I mean, you could. I'm sure there are talented people who do it, but we were just barely comfortable driving into Seattle to visit. So. Yeah,
for sure. So speaking of, so you guys was a trailer, like a pull behind? Mm-hmm. So did you guys bring 2 cars then and then the pull behind? Or, okay, so you guys were always kind of caravanning back and forth. Were you the driver of the RV or the trailer or no?
We didn't even, so our original one was a lot smaller. I probably would have felt comfortable pulling that at some point in time. We got a bigger one, so it's a bigger truck, bigger trailer. I drive behind, and I have the cat with me. So we travel with the cat, and I have her next to me in her little crate. And I like turn on a turn signal and get over so that my husband can get over. I kind of like clear the way for him because we've gone across the country and back a couple times. So I feel like we have it down to a science, but through the mountains. I would definitely be in the car behind as well. Pulling a big trailer like that makes me nervous, but people do it and it's great. So, so you loved Washington, but then you left and you went back to South Carolina. So what kind of made you decide to leave Washington, or was it just time? I'm still sad that I didn't take the job, to stay at my location. Cost of living is a huge factor for us. I would say, you know, aside from having that travel bug, just saving money and saving towards early retirement is something that we established pretty early on. We're like, how long do we have to work like this? This is just a lot. So that was something pretty early on in our marriage. We're like, we want to save as much as we can. We want to be able to retire early. So the travel contracts kind of, help boost our ability to save as well as being in the RV. But yeah, it was sad to pull out, but cost of living was huge. And then getting on I'm from a rural area, getting on an airplane to travel home for like Christmas was weird. I just never pictured myself as being one of those people. I don't fly a lot in general. So I felt really grown up and cool, but I was like, yeah. I don't know, this is just really weird to have to fly home. So we wanted to be within driving distance of Ohio. We have older grandparents, and we also just needed to get back to that lower cost of living so that we could get into a better savings. And South Carolina is definitely one of those states with the lower cost of living. And we had known that already because we had been there. So
I didn't realize that. Okay. That's good to know for sure. I've heard Washington can be expensive, but just because it's very sought after too, but that's good to know.
I mean, it's worth it, especially if you're going short term. It's definitely worth trying out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, speaking of like finances and trying to save towards early retirement, something that you had I've seen on your page and we talked about a little bit is you kind of have a little bit of a side hustle going on, right? Where you do some thrifting, buying and selling. Can you give us kind of an idea on what you do for your side business and what that looks like for you?
You might have to cut me off if I go too long. This is probably my true passion. I have been reselling online for about 8 years. I started out on the app Poshmark and I just hit $25,000 in sales. Took me 8 years.
Oh my gosh.
But we paid for our first RV with profit from reselling from that year. We make enough to claim it on taxes and things.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm an avid like discount and bargain shopper, and I kind of grew up that way. And eventually, I started flipping things on the internet from like discount stores. And then I got into thrifting, found like an online Instagram community and learned about thrifting and brands and styles. And I guess it kind of looks like an easy thing to get into, but really there's a lot. Like I've literally been learning about it for 8 years and I'm still not, fantastic at it, but getting
That's
into
crazy.
the thrifting part and getting more out of fast fashion and realizing how detrimental to, the earth and workers overseas and their labor and just the impact of fast fashion and moving from, cheap bargain stuff to thrifting where you can find really good quality items for cheaper than fast fashion. And it's way more eco-friendly. So yeah, I could go on for a long time. So I'm just going to stop.
No, I think it's so interesting. So can you take us through like kind of what it looks like for you? Like, are you going mostly to thrift stores or are you finding, good sales that come in and buying it for like, for the first time? Or what does a cycle look like for you for something that you pick up and then you end up selling off?
So like I said, I did start out with kind of like that discount and bargain shopping. But I've transitioned, I would say like at this point in time, 95% of what I own in my own closet is secondhand. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I prefer going to the thrift stores because I like to see and touch, and part of it is the quality of items and to be able to feel those is important to me. But there's a lot of great apps that you can buy and sell on like Poshmark, Mercari, ThredUp. If you like high-end stuff, The RealReal. There's a ton of places to shop online. I don't have the patience. People think it takes patience to go to the thrift store, but I don't have the patience to sit on the computer and do it. But I go to local thrift stores, Goodwill, Salvation Army. Basically, just wherever I live, I'm going to scout out all the stores and check them all out. And then I stop pretty regularly. It's kind of like a stress relief for me, especially after a long day at work. Pick up an item. I pay attention to the quality in the fabric, the brand. Is it on trend? What the possible resale value might be. I try to get about $20 per item. And then I list to a multitude of places. I just started an Instagram resale page where I'm selling directly to people instead of having that middleman take out 20%. But I sell on eBay and all that. something that's kind of, it's not strange, but I started picking up like bath and body things and toiletries and things that are sealed and discontinued. Mm-hmm. And those sell on eBay in a matter of like a couple days. So I might pick up like 2 face cleansers at $1 a piece, and actually just did this. So I picked them up 2 days ago, listed them on eBay. They're brand new and sealed, and they sold within 24 hours for I think $29.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's kind of expanding into new things.
Yeah. Well, it's such an interesting subject because I know a lot of travel therapists, because you're traveling. It sounds like you started this before you were traveling, but a lot of travel therapists, since they're traveling, they have the time or the ability to add some of these side projects on, you know, because you can have longer breaks. I know traveling, you know, you're still working in a facility, you're still working full time and all of that, but sometimes it gives you the ability to have these breaks or have more time for things on the side that, again, also bring you income and obviously brings you joy, right? Like, how fun that you get to do that.
I love doing the thrifting, but then when it's time to sit down and like do the actual work to list it, I might have like a whole bin of things sitting in the back of my car just waiting, but that's okay. Yeah. I get around to it. That's cool. Especially with the breaks in travel. Like I don't pick anything up during the summers. I keep my summers off, and you know, the contract has ended. So just having that money, if we want to travel somewhere during the break or go visit family or something, it lets you kind of feel like you're still having an income, that if you want to go out to dinner or to a brewery or something, that you, if you're trying to save, you still are kind of counteracting that lack of funds that, you know, not coming in from your contract.
For sure. Okay, so one other side note on this, because I just find it so interesting. I used to go thrifting a lot, and I really enjoyed that. I haven't for a while because, honestly, sometimes it's a little overwhelming. You go in there, and there's, like, so much stuff. Mm-hmm. Do you have any suggestions for maybe people that are interested in thrifting or repurposing items, but maybe feel the same way, where they're maybe a little overwhelmed when they walk in?
Yeah. I mean, I've had days, I enjoy it, but, like, it can be draining, where you go to a huge place and you want to see everything because you don't want to miss anything. But, you know, 3 hours later, you're thirsty and you're like, I've been in here for 3 hours. I have 2 things in my car.
Gosh.
Like, that's really overwhelming. I would recommend trying like a small local thrift store. So there's actually one in my hometown is tiny, but there's like a little church thrift store, and I stop like every other day just because it's so tiny. I can kind of just walk through it in 5 minutes and tell if they added anything or not. Another thing would just be to seek out the sections that you know you're looking for certain things. Like athleisure is really big right now. So when I go in, I might, you know, make a beeline to the athleisure section. And that way, you know, especially if I'm thrifting for myself, I don't want to look through everything. I know, you know, here's something that I'm missing from my wardrobe right now. So I'm only going to look at the shoes and the athleisure and, I don't know, maybe the coats or something. So just picking a couple different things, because it absolutely can be overwhelming.
That's great advice. Okay, now I want to go.
Well, I hope you do.
I know, right? It is so fun. You always find things that you're like not expecting, you know, and you can find, I don't know, you can find some fun shirts and all sorts of stuff. But anyway, I love that you do that. Okay. So the other topic that we wanted to talk to you a little bit about is working in schools and what that experience has been like for you. I know that you've been really passionate about pediatrics and working in schools. And so kind of hearing from you, having that experience where you were a permanent employee and then you transitioned into travel, you know, somebody that is interested in traveling but maybe has worked in a district for years or something like that. I guess what's the difference for you? Like, what do the contracts look like different? I'm wording this so wrong, but what is it feel a lot different working in a school as a permanent employee versus working in a school as a traveling therapist?
I totally got what you were saying.
Okay, great.
Yes and no. No, as in unless the opportunity comes to stay and you are open to staying, I do go in it kind of being forward and upfront with this is my contract. I'm here for the school year. Typically, I don't know. We're not good at planning. That's why I'm a traveler. I don't know what the next year is going to entail. So I never say like, oh, I'm just absolutely up and moving, because I don't know. I don't know, how I'm going to like it, how the area is. I don't know what life is going to bring. So I never say that I'm not staying, but I am. You get used to goodbyes. And so I'm upfront with, okay, I'm here, for this year. We'll see what's coming up. I already said that. That part of it, I think, is different. The part of it that's the same is I've always feel welcomed. I've always felt like the teams at the schools have just been welcoming with open arms. It's still the same job. It feels the same. The only difference is I feel like I'm there probably temporarily. But open to whatever happens. I would say another difference is just the pay and the contracts. I did feel a little bit stuck, especially after kind of moving around Ohio. I didn't love being a permanent employee. I felt like I went to a lot of trainings that didn't apply to me. I felt like because I had this contract with the district on a personal level, that I was always pushed into a box as a teacher or something. Like, I don't know. I always felt like I was doing things that didn't really apply to me. And then I also felt really stuck on the pay scale. I worked for a lot of districts where they were on pay scale freezes. And sometimes if you could get out of that freezer, if you could move on the scale, I'm not really looking to go back to school, but there were times where the only way I could have gotten much of a raise was to pay to go back to school. Yeah. And at this point in time, that's not something I was interested in. So I do prefer the flexibility of the contracts, and you can almost shop around a little bit more. Whereas, if you don't have to settle down to one specific spot, you can try to keep at least maintaining your salary, if not growing. And it depends. It's kind of all over the place with both, I guess, at times. But I felt more able to advocate for myself when there's that third party, especially when I have my husband too, because he's good at that. And with travel, I've been able, we both worked for AMN, so I was able to bring him in. But being able to push for what I felt like I deserved after my years of experience.
Yeah, for sure. Does he work in schools as well?
No.
He doesn't. Okay.
He has never.
He hasn't. No, okay.
No, he does mostly outpatient.
He does. Okay. So I guess working with over COVID and all of this, did you end up working remotely at all? Did you work in person, or what does that look like for you this school year?
So just in March of 2020, we were near like ground zero of COVID in Washington State. So we left work on a Thursday and started teletherapy on Tuesday of the next week.
Wow.
So that was interesting. I had middle school and high school, and, we just did the best we could do. And it was wild. Last year in South Carolina, it really didn't seem like the numbers were quite as bad there. We were not even necessarily very, very minimally hybrid, but I had some kids virtual and then a lot of kids face-to-face at school, and we had social distancing and we had masks and cleaning protocols, and it felt good to be in person, but it was also, it was a lot. It was very full days, especially with the cleaning and only being able to have so many kids in your room at once. So that was kind of like I I just felt like I survived last year. I worked in a great school with a great team and an awesome community. And I think that's what kept us going. This year, after doing hybrid and teletherapy and all that, I kind of decided I like to be at home and in my RV, just hanging out with all my little surroundings that I have. And I also didn't want to necessarily be stuck to one area for the whole school year. I might be, I don't know. So I pushed for teletherapy.
Oh,
it was a little bit of a waiting game because obviously school districts are trying to push to get face-to-face people. So I had to wait, and finally I do have a contract. School actually started. I'll be working at Albuquerque schools in New Mexico. But my license is taking forever. Not really forever. An appropriate amount of time. It just feels like forever because school started. So I'm going full-time teletherapy. And AMN has like a whole group of us through the same district. So I actually have a meeting with them in a little bit. And so that'll be good, making that transition, but also having like a little pod of people who are doing the exact same thing in the same place.
Oh, for sure. Well, because you're in Ohio, right? So you're not even going to be in New Mexico. Nope. It's, crazy that you can be a therapist in another state, but you do need to get licensed there, like you said. So, okay. Since you still live in an RV, right? Okay. So what is that like doing? I guess you're just about to start, but doing teletherapy within an RV, that's such a different, working style, but very cool. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that'd be interested in doing that.
So being in my hometown right now, I'm going to say I'm not going to be doing teletherapy most days from the campground. Wi-Fi is kind of hit or miss, and that's typical. I can do things to like counteract that and, pay money to have certain things installed. Eventually, if we travel outside of Ohio, I'll do that to make sure that I've got the connection that I need. But I have family members in my hometown who work from home, so they have solid internet. It's not going to start very early because that's mountain time. So I'll probably be working 10 to 5 or something like that. So I will probably just kind of grab my stuff and head out for the day. But most of your materials and resources are online. So, really all you need is the computer and a solid Wi-Fi source or a solid Ethernet. So as much as I'd like to be in the camper all day, which is weird because it's just small and there's nothing there. I'll be leaning on family members for the time being.
It's nice to know, though, that if you chose to, upgrade your internet or whatever the case is, there are things that can be done. So if somebody really wanted to do that, that is an option. Okay. Yeah. Cool. And maybe eventually you'll do it. I could see you doing this for a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the thing. I'm like, if I do teletherapy and I like it as much as I think, then we have friends, who are from Ohio, but we met. So the RV community is a whole nother thing. You meet a lot of people, but very short term. We met a couple from Ohio who down in South Carolina, and they were living and working there from the campground for 2 years. But they both were working remote during COVID, and one is in tech, and they just took their RV cross country. And, they've done the upgrades so that they have solid Wi-Fi. They're kind of doing the opposite. So I'm working from the Eastern time in Mountain time. So I'll kind of have, some chill time in the morning and work a little bit later. Yeah. They are now, I don't know if I think they're in Mountain time now, but still working for East Coast time. So they've got really early mornings, but they've been on the road and working and visiting different places when they can. And so I'm kind of watching them and seeing how they're doing it in hopes that maybe we get to do a little bit more traveling in the future.
For sure. I mean, it's kind of one of the silver linings, I guess, with COVID, although COVID has been really challenging and really hard for a lot of people. But this kind of new style of working that people didn't realize was there, like you hadn't had that experience before this all happened, and it kind of just threw you into this new teaching style, right? And now look at you, you know?
I had been interested for years too. I just never felt like I had the opportunity. You know, you have to seek that out to train and to try it. And yeah, it just kind of within like 4 or 5 days, I was a full-time teletherapist, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can do this.
I can do it. Something you brought up before was kind of the pay difference between being a permanent employee and being a traveling therapist. And I know there can be some pros and cons with either. Was it a big challenge for you to go from, you know, probably getting paid yearly salary before to now getting paid as a traveler and getting paid for the hours that you're working? So then, you know, in the summer, not making money. Is that correct? So you're making more, but you aren't getting paid throughout the summer. Has that been a challenge, or do you have any tips for somebody else that might be starting to travel and has been a previous permanent employee? I'm
an avid saver. So for me, it just kind of worked out easily. It is different. I would say the biggest thing, not necessarily the pay. It usually evens out, and still you might even make a little bit more in the 9 months than you would in the 12. For me, it's the health insurance, which is probably a whole nother podcast or 2 or 3, and I will watch that one because I still don't have it figured out. The healthcare lapse during the summer, and it's doable. It just takes some time and effort is the biggest part. I don't know if I have advice. I just kind of budget my money, and I just save most of it. I pay my bills and have a little bit left over to save. I'm trying to I don't really think about it, but it's a shift. It's something I guess I do think about it every summer. Just in terms of, you know, I don't want to go out and do a bunch of things and spend a bunch of money because I don't have pay coming in, but I've saved from my contract.
That makes sense. So it's kind of just planning ahead a little bit.
Yeah,
okay. That's
it's
doable.
Kind of a mindset that I've always had about money. So I'm frugal and cheap, and that's just who I am.
Hey, it's worked out for you though. You know, I love it.
We'll see when that retirement year comes.
Yes. Keep us posted. Is there any advice or suggestions you'd give for another SLP that's considering working in a school that doesn't have that experience? I feel like it's important that you like kids, or like at least can tolerate them. They're funny. They're energetic. They'll keep you on your toes. If you don't like kids, I mean, I don't know if it's worth trying. I think the schedule is fantastic, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I think the teams that you work on in a school setting, you're like your own little island most of the time, but then you also have just great people and resources surrounding you. So the teams are great, and the communities that the schools are built around, I just really enjoy that. On the negatives, there's a lot of paperwork, can be high stress, lots of flexibility. If you're not flexible, it's probably not the best place. Or if you need to grow in your flexibility, it will make you do that, because there's a lot going on. And I think it pushes you to be creative without having to be like arts and crafts. Like I don't have like cool stuff. When I first got on like Instagram 10 years ago or whatever and started following SLPs, I was like, how do these people make all these things? Like, I'm not crafty. I get by with a board game and I don't know, just the knowledge that I have in my head. You don't have to be like this overachieving, crafty person
to work in a school. So don't let that kind of facade scare you. Like, lots of us are just normal people just getting by, but having fun with the kids. Like, I don't know. I felt kind of like I didn't fit into that mold for a long time. But then I kind of fell into other, teams and communities where I was like, okay, I don't have to like have a new craft every day with, like, I don't have to go out to the dollar store and buy all these things, and you can just do it and not go above and beyond, but still have good, solid therapy. And to me, rapport is huge. If you can build the rapport with the students, that's what's going to drive your success as a therapist and their success. So
that's great advice. I love it.
That was very long-winded.
No, I think it's great. I think it's really great for people to hear, because I see that sometimes. I'm in some Facebook groups and you see all these people posting and it looks like they just like are made of money. They have all the things, right? And so that can be kind of overwhelming, I can imagine. So I'm glad that you touched on that.
The couple of times I've gone into schools and I'm like, they don't maybe have as much materials as I would hope to see, because you don't even need the super duper stuff. Once you've established how to do therapy with a wide variety of students, it's really all in your head, and you just need things to keep the kids motivated and engaged. So that's when I go out to the thrift store. Here's Apples to Apples Junior for $1. And then you bring it in and they're like, oh, that's so great. So, you can pick up $1 game here and there. But if you can build that rapport with the students and make that connection, your therapy will be successful.
It's great advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us today. We got such good information, and I'm going to go to my local thrift store now. So
I'm so excited. I don't know. We're going to have to like exchange emails or something. I want to see pictures, prices. I need to know everything.
Well, I need to know that I'm getting a good deal. So
that's true.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you. See ya.
All right. Bye. And that brings us to the end of the show. Thanks for tuning in to I Need Travel Therapy. To learn more about today's episode, make sure to explore the show notes at medtravelers.com/I Need Travel Therapy. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a guest. If you're a therapist interested in traveling, visit medtravelers.com to explore nationwide travel therapy job offerings and to learn about the amazing benefits that MedTravelers has to offer. Also, a very special thanks to producer Jonathan Carey, assistant producers Katie Schraben and Sam McKay, and Aiden Dykes for the music and editing. See you next time, Travel Fam!